Part 168. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1671. Laozhou is dizzy, let alone Laozhou, even the most clever Thursday Lang of the old Zhou family standing here is dizzy. They didn't understand a large part of the middle, and they heard the last data. No, old Zhou Tio, you didn't even remember the last data. Lejun continued to say slowly, also, this is only the first year. In the second year, we will still produce 20 hatching eggs, and we do not restrict how many they can produce. Give it to us, including the eggs. But in fact, except for the first year we spent money to buy hens and eggs, we don't have to spend money every year after that, and we can share chickens and eggs with little effort. Grandpa, do you think it's worth it? The old Zhutu couldn't help but look at his old wife. Is it accurate to be a ruler? Where does Qian know? She glanced at Lao Zhutu and said, anyway, it's more accurate than you. The elders basically couldn't figure out these numbers, so Zhou Dalin looked at the eldest son beside him. Zhou Lizhong couldn't help straightening his back, and said bitingly, I have to think about the possibility to figure it out. Zhou Dalin didn't say anything. The little Qian family was used to it, and there were only a few girls in the family who were smarter, from their generation. See how much smarter Man Bao is than her brothers. So looking at the gap between his son and Lejun, Xiao Qian is not sad at all. It's better than the comparison between his father and his sister-in-law, right? There was silence in the room for a long time, and finally Mrs. Qian said, okay, since it is Man Bao and Lejun's decision, then listen to them. I bought the eggs and the hens, so I can't return them, right? The old Zhutu also became kind immediately. Although he didn't understand most of them, he still understood the ones that made money, and some of them were good. Because of the help of the maids and maids brought by Mrs. Lu, they finally took pictures of all the eggs before dark. After they were sure that they were all good eggs, they set up the baskets and decided to load the eggs and send them tomorrow. Pu village. Old Zhou Tio warned, go slowly on the road. This egg is different from other things, so you can't bump it. Zhou Dalin and Wu Lang, who were walking with them, responded, and they drove 2 mule carts over, just in time to load the eggs and hens. Lejun ordered the hens through Wu Lang and some merchants and farmers. Wu Wulang said while driving the mule cart, I thought you asked for the chicken for the family, and I also want to say that it will not take so much to set up a banquet. As for the chicken, who knew you had this idea in mind? Zhou Lejun suddenly remembered, by the way, did the 6th uncle buy the chicken for the banquet? Friday Lang fell silent. When Zhou Lejun saw it, he said, it's over, tomorrow is the 7th day of the first day, is there still time? Wu Wulang thought about it and said, let's go back today, and I'll go out and look for it in the morning. There shouldn't be many guests at home, so 1 table and 2 chickens are almost the same. Zhou Lejun had a different opinion, it won't be less. My aunt and the others will leave the palace tomorrow afternoon. They have many friends and must invite more people. Yes, Man Bao is inviting people in the Chongguan Hall at the moment. Of course, she doesn't invite everyone. She just invites some people who she thinks are better, such as Feng Zonping, Yi Xiang, and others who have the same temperament as her. Zhao Liaolang, who has an appetite. Zhao Liaolang thought that he had nothing to do on the 8th day, and that the house where Zhou Man lived now used to be theirs. So he nodded and agreed. As soon as Zhao Liaolang responded, the few who usually played better with him turned to look at Man Bao with bright eyes. Man Bao met their eyes, hesitated for a moment, and then asked, are you coming? A few people followed suit. A few classmates who were bored and flipping through the book listened. They raised their heads and glanced at Man Bao and said, anyway, we are also members of the Chongguan Museum, and we also have colleagues. Go. Man Bao opened his mouth wide. But before she could speak, the others had already responded. When people come to drink wedding wine, Man Bao can't keep people out, can he? Can only be down. After leaving the cafeteria, Man Bao turned to look at Bai Shan. Are they befriending me? Bai Shan nodded. Whether you admit it or not, now everyone sees you as the prince's confidant. Except for the 9 of us who study hard, the rest of the people in Chongquen Hall are also from the prince's side. Your confidant has a family. There is a happy event to be done, and of course they have to go as an alliance. Man Bao thought about it and said, the price of this gift is a bit high. Bai Shan didn't care. Forget it, you are in the East Palace now, it's useless to clarify. His Majesty believes that you are his subject, not the prince's confidant. Man Bao thought about it for a while and felt that it was very reasonable, so he decided to visit the emperor before leaving the palace, give him gifts, and then help Mingda and Princess Changjiao to say a few words. Yes, the 3 of them are scheduled to apply for leaving the palace with the emperor and queen on the 7th day of the first lunar month. Man Bao finally spent money to buy some medicinal materials from the Thai hospital, and then prepared 2 sachets for the emperor and the queen. She smelled the faint fragrance for the 2 of them, and Gu Zhong smelled it, and then said, this is to help you sleep. I think your Majesty and the Empress are a little tired recently, did you not sleep well at night? The emperor nodded again and again. Exactly, I don't know why, even if there is nothing on my mind, I can't sleep. It's like that when you're older. Man Bao did not say the sentence, but said, this medicine bag can be placed under the pillow or hung on the tent. It is for sleep aid. Man Bao also took out a prescription from his sleeve and handed it to Gu Zhong. He smiled and said, this is the prescription. If your Majesty and the Empress use it well, they can go to the Imperial Hospital to match it. Gu Zhong took the prescription and asked carefully, how long does it take to change this medicine pack? You can change it every 10 days, it doesn't need to be too frequent. Man Bao said, they are all very common medicinal materials, but the method of concocting is special. This is a small recipe found by teacher Emma. When I shared it with her, I mainly told her that the preparation method of the medicinal materials was different, and the medicinal effects were also very different. Some medicinal materials can even be used directly to make perfume, but no one can smell the strong fragrance of it until it is thoroughly processed. The Emperor and the Empress still liked to hear Zhou Man talk about these medical principles, so the atmosphere was just right. The Emperor also cared about the prince's body. He was even more satisfied when he learned that the prince and the future grandson were healthy. So Mingda and Chang Yu took advantage of this time to propose that they want to play outside the palace. The emperor said without thinking, what are you doing out of the palace? It's no fun outside the palace. Mingda said, father is lying, you often sneak out of the palace to play with your uncle. If it's not fun, why would you go out of the palace? The emperor was choked on the saliva and coughed violently. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1672. Chang Yu looked at Mingda, and Mingda stepped forward and hugged the emperor's arm and shook it. Father, please let us go out to the palace for a day. It just so happens that the 6th brother who is full of treasure is getting married, and we want to see the people outside. It's like getting married. The emperor and the queen laughed and said, Mingda wants to get married now, is it that we Mingda want to recruit a concubine? Obviously trying to fool the past. Royal father. Mingda shook the emperor's arm, not happy for him to open up the topic like this. The emperor looked at Mingda's face full of expectations, his heart softened, and he couldn't bear to refuse. Speaking of which, Mingda has not been out of the palace very much in the past 2 years, and she was in poor health 2 years ago, and she went out of the palace many times. Not much. The emperor hesitated, then secretly looked at the queen. When Mingda saw it, he knew that the royal father had agreed in his heart, and immediately turned his head to ask his mother, Mother, please let us go out of the palace to play. Chang Yu didn't dare to act like a spoiled child with the father and emperor, but dared to act like a spoiled child with the queen, so he also stepped forward and hugged the queen's arm to beg along with him. The queen asked with a smile, "First of all, tell the truth about what you are going to do when you leave the palace." She smiled and said, "I haven't seen you talking about going out of the palace to play before. Why do you want to go out of the palace so much recently?" Mingda and Chang Yu peeked at Man Bao. Man Bao was silent for a while and then said, "They want to go to my house for wedding wine." The queen asked Mingda, "Is that so?" Mingda nodded again and said, "Empress Mother, we also want to take a look at the public sentiment." The queen could see that they were not telling the truth, and after thinking for a while, she said, "Okay, but you can only go for one day. You must come back before the palace gate is locked. After leaving the palace, you are not allowed to compete with the people to cause trouble." The two nodded again and again, wishing to nod their heads. The queen agreed, and the emperor had no objections. If he hadn't been busy, he would have wanted to go out of the palace to have a look. The Double Ninth Festival is here, and the people around Jiangyi are not having a good time this year. The court decided to relax the age of the elders to 50 this year, and those who are over 70 years old can enter the palace and have a meal with the emperor, and let the emperor comfort them. So the emperor is very busy this year. Mingda and Chang Yu cheered in a low voice, and couldn't help leaving hand in hand with Man Bao in front of the empress. After seeing it, the emperor said, "Mingda and Chang Yu rarely have friends of the same age. Since they don't plan to recruit concubines for them in the past 2 years, why not recruit a few more girls into the palace to accompany them to study?" The queen said, "Now they only read books for half a day every day. Most of the people of the same age as them are going to talk about kissing. Why bother others?" The emperor thought it was a good idea. Didn't Zhou Man say, "Is it bad for the life of the children if a woman gets married too early and becomes pregnant? I see that the daughter of a noble family is indeed getting married too early. Since the palace has postponed the marriage for a few years, it can also be postponed for a few years outside." The queen laughed in a low voice, "Are you afraid that they would marry too early, and Chang Yu and the others would take away all the good sons-in-law too late?" The emperor coughed lightly and turned his head away uncomfortably, but he really meant it. Couldn't Mingda and Chang Yu pick up what's left? The queen was naturally a little selfish, and began to think about it. Mingda and Chang Yu had already dragged Man Bao away, and they discussed with Man Bao, "Where shall we meet tomorrow?" Man Bao said, "Tomorrow you guys can play by yourself first. I guess I won't be able to find you until after lunch." Chang Yu was puzzled. "Why? I have to watch my sixth brother get married. My sixth brother goes to greet the bride at noon, and when my sixth brother and sixth sister-in-law worship heaven and earth, I have to go to entertain relatives of Chiu's family with my mother. After dinner, it should be already its past time, so you can play first, don't wait for me." After thinking about it, Man Bao said, "Only one thing, don't quarrel and fight with people, or else I'll have to eat and hang it if I get into trouble." Chang Yu assured, "Don't worry about this, Mingda and I are both good-natured, and we won't quarrel with people." Mingda said, "I'm very interested in your sixth brother getting married. Can I go to your house for wedding wine?" Man Bao wanted them to go, but he didn't want them to go, so he sighed and said, "You are my friends, it would be best if you could go, but you are also princesses, and all the guests came here. Kneel down." "What kind of phoenix is not a phoenix?" Mingda said, "We go out of the palace in small clothes, and we don't go out with great fanfare. You don't need to greet them specially. Just tell your family that we are your friends." Chang Yu had attended the wedding of a noble daughter from an aristocratic family, but Mingda did not. She was not in good health since she was a child. Generally, unless the emperor brought her personally, she would not be able to go to places with too many people. So Mingda is particularly interested. After thinking about it, Man Bao said, "Okay, then you go out of the palace tomorrow to play by yourself, and come back to my house at noon. At that time, my sixth brother should welcome the bride back, and you are just joining in the fun. Shouldn't we follow first? Man Bao shook his head and said, forget it, you rarely leave the palace once, so you can't just watch the wedding once, right? Man Bao felt distressed for them when she thought about it. Every time she was out of the palace, she felt that her days were too short. For example, Suandu Temple and Huguo Temple, even if I have been there several times, I am still very happy when I go again, and each time I can visit a different interesting. Mingda and Chang Yu also cherished this opportunity to leave the palace, so they nodded their heads fiercely, feeling that Man Bao was indeed their confidant, and even thought of this. So the two turned around and thought about what gift to bring to the wedding. Mingda said, I have a peacock fan. It was given to me by my third brother after Nanfan paid tribute 2 years ago. I will pass it on to her. Chang Yu said, I remember that there is a shoe brocade table screen in my warehouse, embroidered with shoe bamboo, which means rising. I thought I was a princess at the time, it was useless to ask for this, but that table screen it's really good looking, so I kept it, and now I think it's just right for her, so I'll give it to her. The ant next to the two listened to them discussing for a long time, and couldn't help laughing. Princess, it's good to drink wedding wine and give gifts. Mingda said, gift money is gift money, but this gift was given to Manbao alone. Chang Yu also nodded, and Mingda looked at each other and said, this way, next time I can talk about leaving the palace again. The ants stopped talking immediately, and the maids went to help find out the two things they said, and then found a box and packed it. Not only did they give gifts by themselves, but they also went to the prince and the princess to tell them that they were going to Zhou Man's house for wedding wine tomorrow. The crown princess is now heavier and more difficult to walk. Hearing that, she supported the palace maid's hand and smiled, then you should also give us a gift. The prince had no objection, but when the two ran to find the third prince pretended not to understand. He recently practiced martial arts with martial arts masters in the martial arts field, and that's fine. He still has to ride a horse, and he spends no less than half an hour on the horse every day. He felt that he was back in his school days, and then he was very tired, because he was fat, the flesh was tender, and the inner thighs were rubbed so badly. He didn't want to see Zhou Man now, and he didn't want to hear anything about her, not even her name. Here. Seeing that the third brother didn't say anything, Mingda and Chang Yu discussed secretly after they left, the third brother is really stingy. Anyway, Man Bao has cured him, and now he still comes to see him in the palace every day. See you at 4 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1673. Early in the morning, Man Bao sat up from the bed. She sat and changed her mind. Thinking that not only her sixth brother was getting married, but Mingda and Chang Yu were going to come out to play with her, she immediately lifted the quilt and got out of bed. She took out the clothes she had found last night and put them on, and immediately went out to fetch water to wash. Before her, her brothers and sisters-in-law had woken up and started to work. So did the other servants in the house. Someone brought the ingredients, and they had to send the ingredients to the kitchen to prepare. And the place where the front yard entertains guests should also start to put tables and chairs, put fruit trays and snacks and the like. Holding a wedding in the capital is much more particular than in the village. Even if the old Zhutu is reluctant to spend money and the Jianxi is watching, even if it is for the sake of the children of Manbao, they have to follow the rules of the capital. Not to mention that MRS Lu and MRS Jian had hinted at it. They said that Master Bai had already had the experience of hosting a happy event, and the old Zhou family knew that they could not follow the way in the village. Even Lao Zhutu said while feeling distressed about Jian, the guests you invite are different, and the gifts they give are different. You can't let people eat the feast in the village, right? So this time, Wu Wulang, like Master Bai, invited 2 cooks from outside to help at home. In addition to the big dishes, some snacks are also indispensable at the banquet. When the guests sit and chat, they can't eat nothing, right? Everyone was busy, and after Man Bao washed up, he ran to the west side courtyard to find Saturday Lang, and saw that he had already put on his wedding clothes and was sitting nervously in the room. Seeing Man Bao, he immediately waved, "Man Bao, come here." Man Bao ran forward, looked at Saturday Lang's face carefully, and said, "Sixth brother, you are so handsome today." Saturday Lang bowed his head and smiled a little embarrassedly, and then whispered to her, "Mother 11 wants to put powder on my face. I don't really want to put that on, I don't feel comfortable." Man Bao carefully recalled the appearance of Bai Dalan's powder coating, and then said, "I think it looks pretty, very white." Saturday Lang reached out and touched his face and said, "I'm not black now. Also, I don't know if it's because he often works in the kitchen or because of the ointment given by Man Bao, Saturday Lang is much whiter now than his brothers, and he looks not much worse than the best-looking fourth brother. After all, the fourth brother is quite tanned now." So Man Bao said, "If you don't apply it, don't apply it. The most important thing is to be at ease, but you can put some color on your lips to look better." Sachiro. Bai Shan, Bai Erlang, and the others who ran over to join in the fun took it seriously. Seeing that he didn't want MRS 11 to do it, Bai Shan rolled up his sleeves and went on it himself. "Come on, I'll help you paint." Saturday Lang widened his eyes, "How could you do this?" "Bai Shandao, I think my mother has used it, and it's still a treasure that I taught." Saturday Lang didn't expect that the two of them would talk about this kind of thing, and he was speechless for a while. When Saturday Lang was ready, everyone remembered one thing, "Oh, it seems that we haven't eaten breakfast yet." Everyone turned their heads to look at Saturday Lang's lips, unable to speak for a while, and painted in vain. Madame 11, who was on the side, looked straight and happy. She had done makeup for so many couples, and she just thought it was the most fun to put makeup on their family. Everyone had a noisy breakfast, and then sat together in the yard waiting for the auspicious time. A group of teenagers sat in a row in the yard talking, surrounded by busy adults. They looked completely free. Zhou Lixiu sighed while watching, "I passed through so many uncles to get married, but only the 6th uncle got married. It's the easiest time." Saturday Lang glanced at him and said, "It's as if you did something big when your uncles got married." "No, I've done too much," Zhou Lixiu said. "I have to watch the candy cakes at home, and I can't let people touch too much, and I also need to watch the children who come to the house, so that they don't let them drill randomly. Busy." He looked at the servants who came and walked over and said, "It's better now, you don't have to be busy with anything, just join in the fun." Even Zhou Lijun, who was in charge of the accounts, was not very busy, and was taken over by Zhou Dalan and the Liang Bai family. What surprised them was that even Bai Dalan took his wife Cheng's with him, but they were very leisurely. Man Bao was stealing a half-day free time, sitting and waiting happily, but there was only so much free time. A gong sounded in front, and Thursday Lang hurried in from the front and said, "The sedan chairs to welcome the relatives, the convoy is here, Lu Lang, hurry up and go out." So the teenagers cheered and went out around Saturday Lang. The old Zhou family chose a docile high-headed horse, tied a red cloth to its chest, and then sat on it with the help of Saturday Lang. Man Bao and several others, also wearing festive new clothes, jumped on the horse and shouted, "Go and greet the bride." The welcoming team beat all the way to the outer city, and then Mingda and Chang Yu, who were just walking out of the palace and strolling on the street, heard the sound of gongs and drums, and when they turned around, they saw Man Bao flying freely. The two were stunned for a moment, then immediately waved and shouted, "Man Bao, Man Bao." When Man Bao heard this, he nodded slightly to Bai Shan, pulled the horse aside, ran to Ming Da's side, and rode directly on the horse to ask, "Are you out of the palace?" Ming Da looked curiously, "What are you doing?" "Welcome." Ming Da immediately turned around and took over his horse with the guards, and said happily, "I'm going too." Man Bao took the two of them to catch up with the welcoming team, and then jumped in front. The princess servants watched helplessly, and could only separate two people to protect them, while the rest followed behind on horseback. Everyone went to the outer city in a mighty way. The Chiu family's house is in the outer city. There is only one entrance, but the yard is not small. At this time, it is also full of relatives and friends of the Chiu family. To jam. They couldn't make any problems to embarrass Saturday Lang, so Manbao and the others could send red envelopes vigorously. They were very treacherous. Seeing that the people in the door were slow to open the door, they simply grabbed the red envelope and stuffed it through the crack at the bottom of the door. I went in, but only a little was stuffed in, and more was scattered outside the door. The people in the door can see it. In order to take the red envelope, a slit was opened slightly. Once the slit was opened, Bai Shan immediately put the red envelope inside, and the people inside immediately reached out to take it. Erlang immediately pushed the door hard and squeezed in. It was the first time for Mingda and Chang Yu to do such a thing. Regardless of whether they understood or not, they were all excited and yelled, and followed them to push the door. Everyone rushed into the door laughing and joking. Seeing that everyone was throwing red envelopes to open the way, Mingda glanced around, and when he was happy, he took off all the jade cards on his body and threw them out. Bai Erlang happened to be squeezed over, and his sharp eyes saw that he grabbed it. He glanced at the jade card in his hand, and was quite speechless. He stretched out his hand to hold Princess Mingda and said, "This thing can't be thrown around. There is only a penny or two in this red envelope. Throw this jade card out." Bai Erlang couldn't find the right words to describe it, so he put the jade card in her hand and said, "You can't throw it away anyway. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1674. Seeing that she seemed to want to throw something, Bai Erlang tugged at his sleeves, took out a dozen red envelopes and put them in her hands. "Nyo, I'll send them to you." Mingda was so surprised holding the red envelope, he asked, "Why did you bring so many red envelopes?" Bai Erlang laughed and said, "I caught it, how can I call the door without a red envelope? Anyway, there is not much money in the red envelope, either 1 penny or 2 penny. Of course, Bai Erlang didn't feel bad for this little money, but Lao Zhou felt bad. They don't have the custom of throwing so many red envelopes in Qilai village, but they do as the locals do. Who made Lao Lu get married in the capital? Mingda held the red envelope and was considered a member of the husband's family. Bai Erlang led her forward, using the red envelope to clear the way, and rushed to the main room, where he met the Chiu family and his wife. Saturday Lang was surrounded by people, and because of his excitement, he cupped his hands at the couple, but he couldn't say a word. When Shai Zuolang and Weavolang who brought him to meet him saw it, they finally had a feeling that the sixth child had finally come to his senses. The brothers immediately helped him to speak, and taught him sentence by sentence, call father-in-law and mother-in-law quickly. On Saturday, Lang bowed his head to the end and called, "Father-in-law, mother-in-law." Wu Zhou Lang, who was on the side, said again, "Call my father and mother again." On Saturday, Lang bowed down again, "Father, mother." It was also the first time for the Chiu family to marry a daughter, and they were equally excited. Chiu Pei was waiting in the boudoir. As soon as he spoke, she heard it from the other side, and the wife 11 who invited her immediately helped her out with her cousin. As soon as she entered the door, she raised her head and met the eyes of Saturday's Lang. Seeing that today's Saturday's Lang was more handsome than in the past, she couldn't help blushing. Saturday Lang also looked at Chiu Pei with a blushing face, but he couldn't turn his head for a while. Wu Wulang smiled and was satisfied, so he poked him and motioned for him to return to his senses. On Saturday, Lang blushed and turned back to God, and knelt down with Qiu Pei to salute the Qiu family. Mingda and Chang Yu finally finished throwing out the red envelopes, squeezed in from outside to watch the fun, listened to Mother Qiu holding Qiu Pei's hand and warned him a lot, and then said something to Saturday Lang to take care of in the future, and then took it over. The tea they served was drunk. After drinking tea and giving a red envelope, Saturday Lang got up and helped Qiu Pei to turn around together. Qiu Pei has no brothers, and her cousins should have carried it out, but the Jiao family asked too much, and the old man Qiu didn't talk to them. When Lao Zhutu and Qianxi went to Qiu's family to talk about the wedding, the old man Qiu was very anxious, so he couldn't help but tell the two about the conditions of Jia's family. As soon as the old Zhutu heard that the lion of the Jiao family opened his mouth, he just carried a red envelope of 1 or 2 silver for such a long journey, and immediately refused. Even if the money is to be paid by future in-laws, that's not enough. The Qiu family has only one daughter, so won't all the money belong to his grandchildren in the future? So he gave the old man Qiu a crooked idea. The situation in our two families is different. This girl in your family is married, but it is not a marriage. In the future, their second child will follow the Qiu family name. So let me tell you, just let her go out and get on the sedan chair by herself. The old man Qiu opened his mouth wide at that time, and Mother Qiu still felt that this was outrageous. However, the more old Zhutu said, the more he felt that his idea was good, and said, could it be that when Lao Lu comes to the door, when he goes out, do I have to ask his brothers to carry him out? That is definitely not possible, since both of them have special weddings, so there is no need to follow the old rituals. The bride asked her brother to go out on her back. Originally, it meant that her family had a brother as a backer. Since Qiu Pei didn't have it, why should he spend money to make this illusion? The old man Qiu was persuaded, so he gritted his teeth and settled down. At this time, the hijab on Qiu Pei's head was put down, and he was led out by Saturday Lang and 11 Po. Everyone shouted and gave way to both sides. Qiu Pei followed the crowd and stepped out of the threshold of the main room. As a result, it was unknown who had lost a tattered dress outside the door. Everyone didn't pay attention when the crowd dispersed. I almost fell when I stepped on it. Madame 11 supported one of her arms, and when she stepped out, she had already kicked to the side, but the bride still stepped on it. Madame 11 frowned and was thinking about whether to squat down and tore the tattered clothes out of the bride's feet, when Man Bao, who was joining in the fun, had already shouted, "Oh, sixth brother, take the bride away. Take it out." Bai Shan also followed suit, take it out, brother 6 will be the backing of sister 6 in the future, hug it. Bai Erlang and Zhou Lixu immediately followed suit, hurry up, hurry up. Mingda, Chang Yu, and the others thought it was a custom in Lujian County. They thought it was funny, so they also started booing, hurry up, hurry up. Saturday Lang glanced at his fourth and fifth brothers, and seeing that they did not object, he went to Qiu Pei with a blushing face and hugged him. The crowd onlookers didn't know what was going on, they just screamed oh like chicken blood. Everyone crowded a couple of newlyweds through the yard and went out the gate, laughing and watching the groom and the bride hug the sedan chair, so everyone threw their good words out as if they didn't want money. What a long life, a long-term relationship, an early birth of a precious son, congratulations, get rich. Said everything that could be said. Relatives and friends of the Qiu family set off firecrackers and sent the welcoming team away. Man Bao and others jumped on the horse after Lang on Saturday, and Mingda and Chang Yu still followed Man Bao and got together in front. Because one side of the road only allows 2 horses to ride side by side, Man Bao and Bai Shan walked together, and Mingda rode the horse and joined Bai Erlang, turned his head and asked him, "Did the groom go out with the bride in your Lujian County?" Bai Erlang shook his head, but seeing that there were many people around him, he didn't want to embarrass the bride by telling the truth, so he vaguely said, "This is also possible." Mingda smiled and said, "It's really fun." Everyone went back to Zhou's house, and Zhou's house opened the door to welcome the relatives. The invited guests are almost here, Zhao Liaolang and the others are all here, just in time to watch the bride and groom worship. Mingda finally watched a complete civil wedding. It is very cumbersome for her sisters to marry and her brothers to marry, and there are many etiquettes. She used to be frail and basically did not follow the whole process. She thinks folk weddings are quite fun. Man Bao led a group of close friends to send the bride to the new house, and wanted to take the opportunity to molest the sixth sister-in-law, but she was chased out by the fifth sister-in-law who was guarding here. "Hurry up and eat, don't disturb here." The bride. Everyone could only reluctantly leave. See you at 10. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1675. Only then did Man Bao and Bai Shan go to the front to greet the guests they invited, and of course they brought Mingda and Chang Yu with them. Old Zhou's family still doesn't know the identities of these two little girls, they just think that they have brought a lot of followers, and their momentum is also very unusual. Zhou Dalan went to Man Bao and said, "You two friends brought a lot of people, where are they arranged?" Man Bao thought for a while and said, "Arrange them to deliver meals in the front yard. I will take them to the open house in the back garden to eat." The people who can eat in the open house are all the important friends of Man Bao and Bai Shan in the capital. The guests who sit in each place are different. Everyone has the same status and status. Only in this way can we have fun. It was also learned from Zhou Dalan's two weddings. There are too many rules in Beijing. It's not like their Qilai village at all, it's just a matter of arranging according to the distance and distance. The noble ones are basically unable to get a table together. The few people who were sitting in the open hall bragging were stunned when they saw Man Bao bringing Mingda and Chang Yu over. Zhao Liaolang rubbed his eyes and muttered, "I just said that I read it right, you are biased." Said, "I'm blind, am I blind?" Feng Zonping swallowed a few saliva, and quickly got up to salute. Mingda waved his hand and said, "You don't need to be too polite, my sister and I came out in microservices today." Even so, everyone bowed their hands in a salute, and then sat down. Most of the people present have seen Princess Mingda and Princess Chang Jiao. If they haven't seen it, they probably haven't followed the elders to the palace to attend the banquet. Because Zhao Liaolang was their cousin, so he sat at a table with them. He asked Mingda curiously, "Why did your majesty and the empress let you out?" Bai Erlang was drinking tea. When he heard the words, he snorted and said happily, "You said this as if they were something." Everyone was puzzled, "What is it?" Mingda and Chang Yu also looked over. Bai Shan and Man Bao gave him a kick under the table. Bai Erlang was in pain, and then he reacted and said with his mouth tightly closed, "It's nothing, I'm talking nonsense." Mingda and Chang Yu were not stupid, they narrowed their eyes and looked at him. Bai Erlang suddenly pointed to the front and said, "Look, Brother Yang and the others are here." Mingda and Chang Yu immediately turned their heads to look, and saw Yang Heshu and Tang He walking towards each other. Mingda paid off, Chang Yu's eyes were straight, and he couldn't wait to hold his face and stare at Yang Heshu. Yang Heshu and Tang He were indeed higher than them now, so everyone stood up and saluted again. The two of them were a little surprised to see the two princesses here, but their expressions didn't change much. After bowing, they looked at Man Bao. "Let's go over there and sit." Chang Yu pulled Man Bao's clothes. Man Bao originally wanted to let them sit here, and it has always been like this. After all, everyone is relatively close. But as soon as he was pulled by Chang Yu, Man Bao nodded immediately and asked Yang Heshu, "How is the schoolgirl? Is the child healthy?" Yang Heshu smiled and answered a few words, then changed places with Tang He and went to another part of the garden, where there were a few people from Imperial Physician Lu. When Yang Heshu's back disappeared, Chang Yu retracted his gaze and sighed, Why don't you let him eat here? Without waiting for Man Bao to answer, Chang Yu said happily, but it's not bad to be able to see him up close today. By the way, Mrs. Yang has already given birth? Does the child look more like Lord Yang, or more like her? She said to herself, it's better to be more like Mr. Yang. In the future, when I get married and have a daughter, I will let them marry Man Bao. By the way, let's eat quickly, and then go to the post house to see the beautiful man from Goguryeo. Man Bao is sure now that she is someone who likes to look good. Man Bao asked while holding a steamed bun, how will you recruit your concubine in the future if you look at your face like that? Chang Yu curled his lips and said, the concubine is different again, I want to see the face, but the royal father must first look at the family background, as well as the talent and so on. Out of time. She was born too late. Everyone is used to this kind of remarks, especially the boys who grew up in the capital, whether they are older than Yang Heshu, the same age, or younger, will be affected to some extent. But there is no way, who made him come from a good family background and literary talent, but he still looks so good? Everyone had enough to eat and drink, and they were too lazy to move. The scenery of the garden was not bad, so they just sat in the open house and had tea and snacks to enjoy the view. Zhao Liaolang has only been to this house 3 or 4 times, and when he was admiring with his hands behind his back, he suddenly saw that under the wall in the distance seemed to be different from other places. He could not help pointing to the place and asked, what is growing on that piece of land? Man Bao looked up and said, bok choy. Zhao Liaolang was dumbfounded, dishes. Man Bao nodded, yes, what's wrong? Zhao Liaolang waved his hand, sat on the railing and sighed, it's really a waste of money for the prince's cousin to give you this house. Bai Erlang, who was on the side, just remembered, turned his head and said to Man Bao, yes, I almost forgot, this house used to be theirs. As soon as these words came out, Old Zhutu and Master Bai, who were passing by after toasting from Imperial Dr. Lu and the others, looked up together. Zhao Liaolang raised his chin slightly. Man Bao nodded and said to Zhao Liaolang, Zhao Qiuagong has a good vision. This house is not only in a good location, but also has a large space, many rooms, and a lot of open space. It is convenient to grow anything. Zhao Liaolang hummed and said, don't be cheap and sell well. Now there are not many good houses in the inner city, and there are not many houses in the hands of the prince's cousin. Mingda couldn't see his show off, turned his head and said to Man Bao, what's the matter? I'll wait for my princess mansion to be built, I'll invite you to play. Man Bao asked, where is your princess mansion going to be built? It's not in Changelfang, it's in Xingningfang. It's just a few places on the left, and it won't be very far away anyway. Man Bao excitedly said, Changelfang is very good. It is close to the mountains and waters, and it is close to the Daming Palace. It is a little far from the lively places, but there are all the mountains and rivers. How wonderful! Mingda thought for a while and then said, it makes sense. When I look back, I will ask the royal father to build my princess mansion in Changelfang. Zhao Liaolang saw that the more they talked, the more excited they were, and the more they talked, the more they were talking, so he pouted and walked aside to ignore them. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang found old Zhou Tiaoyu and Master Bai, who were stunned, and went up to them and asked, Uncle Zhou, Uncle Tang, Father, why did you come here? The dull eyes of the two of them moved, and they settled on the two in front of them, or Master Bai was stronger. He lowered his voice and asked, then, who are those two? Bai Shan followed their gazes, and after a while, he lowered his voice and said, it's Her Royal Highness. Master Bai is still strong, he is also a scholar and a noble family, isn't he? Although it is very side by side. But the old Zhutu was about to fall when his eyes rolled over, and was quickly supported by Bai Shan. He tried not to let anyone see it. Seeing Bai Erlang stunned, he couldn't help stepping on him. When he came to his senses, he immediately turned around and shouted at Man Bao, "Man, senior sister, are you here to speak? Writing is not easy, of course, it is not easy for everyone to make money, so I don't ask for a reward, I just hope that everyone can support the genuine version and I am very happy. The mood in the past 2 days has been a bit complicated and tangled. After thinking about it, it seems that I haven't done anything for the genuine readers, so I will add an update for you today. Piracy is repeatedly prohibited, I know it, and it is difficult to change the concept of piracy. However, I only hope that the book lovers who read pirated copies will read it, just read it quietly, there is no need to publicize it, don't tell me, don't come to chat with me, ask me to urge more, I will be very uncomfortable, really. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1676. Man Bao turned his head and glanced at him curiously, except when he was beaten and begged for her. Bai Erlang never called her senior sister. Man Bao glanced at his father, who was facing her sideways. Seeing that Bai Shan seemed to be supporting him, he turned his head to Mingda and nodded a few times, then turned and went down. When Man Bao took a closer look, he could see that her father's strength was all on Bai Shan, so he immediately stepped forward to support him, and Master Bai also came back to his senses and reached out to help. Everyone calmly helped Lao Zhutu to the main courtyard to rest. Man Bao rubbed his tiger's mouth, and Bai Shan turned around and poured a glass of water for him to drink, and then Lao Zhutu calmed down. Why am I dizzy again? Man Bao tangled, are you suffering from heat stroke again? Old Zhou Tiou touched his forehead and said, I've come to the capital, and my body is not as good as before. Master Bai sat aside and nodded in agreement. Old Zhutu glanced out and saw that there was no one there, so he took Manbao's hand and said, Manbao, those two little ladies are. It's the princess. Manbao didn't understand what was so exciting, and said, didn't you already know, I'm an imperial physician in the palace, and even the emperor has seen it, and Bai Shan is still reading with the prince, see you. What's so strange about a princess? The old Zhutu said, but I haven't met. I actually met the emperor's daughter. Master Bai was also a little excited, so excited that his mouth was dry. Seeing Bai Erlang standing silly, he pointed to the table and glanced at him. Bai Erlang scratched his head and went to pour a glass of water for his father. After drinking the water, Master Bai was satisfied, and said kindly to the three of them, since there are distinguished guests, then you should go and greet the guests. It's enough to have us in front of you. The old Zhutu also reacted quickly and nodded again and again, yes, you greet the princesses, you don't need to worry about the things ahead, yes, do you want to give you another table? Man Bao, Dad, we're full. Now we'll sit and talk, and we'll go out to play later. Go, do you want your fourth brother and fifth brother to bring something for you? The emperor's daughter, you can't buy something and take it by yourself, right? Bai Shan smiled and said, Uncle Joe, the princesses have all brought attendants. Would you like to go back to the house to rest first? He looked at Man Bao, what he actually wanted to ask was if he wanted some medicine. However, Man Bao felt that it was not necessary. It was a 3-point poisonous medicine, and it was not good to take medicine all the time. So she took out the needle bag and smiled at Lao Zhutu, Dad, let me give you a few needles. Old Zhutu couldn't help but closed his eyes when he saw the long needle. Even though his daughter was a doctor, he was rarely pierced. Even though he had experience and knew that the needle would not hurt, he couldn't help tensing up when he saw the long needle, and then closed his eyes. Man Bao rolled up his sleeves, gave him a needle after pressing the button, and talked to him to relax him, Dad, who did you go to toast? Yang County Magistrate, he used to take care of us in Qilai Village and Tang County Magistrate. I have heard that after you entered Beijing, thanks to his care, I went to toast the two of you with Master Bai. The last time they came for wedding wine, there were so many people in the family that they didn't take much care of them. While talking, Man Bao got the needle, and Lao Zhu felt a little better. Then Man Bao took the needle and said, "Father, the princesses are all well, you don't have to be afraid of them." Old Zhou nodded and nodded, "I'm not afraid." But he still quietly went to Xijian, and then whispered, "You can't let the children bump into the nobles, you let the Li Shuefu run into the garden if you have nothing to do." Qian responded, and she also felt that the princess was very precious. Mingda and the others didn't know anything about it, and they went to visit the garden of Man Bao's family with everyone. Not to mention, it was the mansion that Zhao Qiuagong robbed and gave to the prince. The scenery of the garden is still very good. After Man Bao and the others moved in, they basically didn't change the scenery of the garden, so Fang's few people chose 2 plots of land by the wall, and pulled up those not very beautiful and valuable flowers and plants to grow vegetables. I heard that Mr. Fang plans to bury some lotus roots in the lake recently, so that there may be lotus pods to eat next year. Mingda stood by the lake and looked at it and smiled, although this lake is a little smaller, the scenery is not bad. Man Bao nodded, "That's right, I'm still thinking of pulling the water out of the lake when I get rich, and walking around each yard before returning to the lake." She said, "You don't know, there is a stream of water flowing through the yard where my parents live. Although it is small, it is cooler than other yards in summer." Mingda turned her head to look at her yard, and said with a smile, "This project is not small, I'm afraid it will be a big move." Man Bao nodded, "We haven't found a good way yet, so we haven't moved for the time being. I don't know if we know a great master in the future, and we can guide water to every yard without making a big move." After a few people talked for a while, Chang Yu said eagerly, "Come on, let's go to the post house to see the beautiful men from Goguryeo." A few people thought about it, and then there was nothing to do at home, so they agreed. The post house where the imperial court specially entertained foreign guests is not far from Qiuazijian. Qiuazijian is just 1 street away. It is much busier than Qiuazijian there. Many tea houses, restaurants, and shops are located nearby, so that the envoys from the vassal state can fully feel them. The prosperity of Dajin. Because the sun was getting higher, Man Bao and the others did not ride horses, but came over in a carriage. Mingda and Chang Yu occupied one side of the car window and looked at the bustling market outside. It turns out that the post house is here, these foreign vassal envoys are really lucky. Man Bao thought so too, pointed them to the roadside shop and said, "That one's lamb soup is pretty good, you can eat it after a while when the weather gets colder, that one's meat pie is okay, but his is the best. I eat naan, which is crispy and fragrant." He pointed to a roadside stall and said, "His wontons are very good." Several times, Dr. Ding and the others have taken money to let the medicine boy come here to buy a bowl of wontons to eat. The treasures are full of treasures, and Mingda and Chang Yu have been looking at the stalls with all kinds of gadgets on the side of the road. When she said this, the two of them couldn't help but look at the restaurants on both sides. The carriage stopped not far from the inn, and Daji asked them, "Miss Man, do you want to go in directly?" "It's impossible to go in directly. They didn't tell the father and mother that they came out this time to see beautiful men, so the two of you pushed me, I bumped you, and then looked at Man Bao together." Man Bao leaned back and looked at them warily, "What do you want?" Mingda smiled and said, "Our identity is not easy to go in, can you go in for us and have a look?" Man Bao said, "My eyes can't replace yours." "Aya, when you find someone, take them out," Chang Yu said, "just say you invite them to tea, take them out and let us take a look." Minda nodded again and again. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1677. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang had already jumped off their horses. Seeing that the three people in the car were slow to get out, they couldn't help but knocked on the door. Man Bao sighed and jumped out of the car, looked up and looked around, then pointed to the tea house diagonally opposite the post house and said, "You guys go there and wait for us." Bai Shan turned his head to look at the tea house and asked, "Where are you going?" Man Bao glanced at him, then reached out and pointed at Mingda and Chang Yu. "They are you." He pointed at him and said to himself, "This is me we." Bai Shan laughed and asked instead, "Where are we going?" Man Bao sighed, pointed to the inn a dozen steps ahead and said, "Let's go there." Bai Erlang on the side couldn't help it and asked, "What about me?" Man Bao felt that they were in the east today, so it was not easy for the guests to play by themselves, so he said to Bai Erlang, "Let's take the princesses to the tea house, and give them something delicious and drink to sit first, we'll be there in a while." Bai Erlang stretched out his hand, "Money." Man Bao reached out and slapped his slap, "It's just a treat, when are you so stingy? I just gave you the money to build a village, and I don't have any money now. How much does a cup of tea cost?" Bai Shan had already given him a bunch of money from the purse, and he said to Man Bao, "Don't ask him for it, I saw Lu Huan borrowing money from him again today, tomorrow is Chongyang, and I heard that he wants to spend money. Gifts for his grandparents." Bai Erlang took the money and led Mingda and Chang Yu to the tea house opposite. Man Bao and Bai Shan also stood in front of the inn, looked up at the inn together. Bai Shan was very curious, "You've all met Brother Yang, Ziyu is in front, what's the point of looking at other beautiful men?" Man Bao also didn't understand Mingda and Chang Yu very well. From her point of view, Shuexian Yang was already good looking enough. Besides Shuexian Yang, Bai Shan, Yin, or others were not ugly either. Many, "Why do you have to come to see the beautiful man from Goguryeo?" But she was her own good friend. She felt that she had to find something to make up for them, so she thought about it and said, "This is just like your men. Even after seeing the most beautiful woman, you will think that the beauty of the world is different in spring, flowers, autumn, and moon. I have some strengths, and I still can't help but look at other beauties." Bai Shan shook his head, "I'm not like that, my appearance is just a skin." Man Bao said, "Liar, I don't believe there are men in this world who don't like beautiful women. It's like there is no woman in this world who doesn't like beautiful men." The two soldiers guarding in front of the inn saw the two of them standing in front of the door talking lively about you coming and going, but they just didn't enter the door. If it wasn't for the fact that they were well dressed and got off the carriage, they would have driven them away long ago. Only then did Man Bao and Bai Shan regain their senses. They seemed to have been standing in front of the gate for a long time. Bai Shan immediately cleared his throat, tidied up his clothes, and saluted. "Bai Shan is a student of the Imperial College, I heard that the envoy from Goguryeo lives here, and I want to ask for advice on some matters related to Goguryeo. Envoy, please also ask the official to make a statement on your behalf. In the end, Kongwengan is under the prince's family. It's not good to use this name. What if it is rumored that someone will put the crown on the prince and think that he has become a vassal state?" Who knew that the guards who guarded the gate only glanced at them and waved directly, "Go in." Two people, so casual? Man Bao couldn't help but step forward, pointed to his nose and asked, "I can go forward without reporting my name?" The soldier asked curiously, "What's wrong with this?" "As long as you don't fight in the inn." After speaking, I was a little worried, and added, "Also, don't defraud others of their money. When something goes wrong, it's you who don't look good." Man Bao and Bai Shan, do they look like they are cheating? However, the two of them made it in. This post house is one of the many hotels in Honglu Temple. The people living in it are mainly from Goguryeo, Huiye, Dangxiang and other tribes. It is the first time for the two of them to come here. Patio at the back. It was a post house in the end. The yard was not built very big, the courtyard was square, Some potted plants were planted, and then there were corridors leading to various places. They stood in the patio and looked up, only then did they notice that this post house has 3 floors. Lu, for a while, they really don't know where to find someone. Just as he was hesitating, a bearded man came downstairs, and Bai Shan immediately stepped forward to salute and ask for directions. Bearded's Mandarin was very lame, but Bai Shan slowed down and he still understood it. He was a little hesitant when he heard that he was looking for an envoy from Goguryeo, but after glancing at the two of them, he turned around and took them upstairs. When they got to the 2nd floor, Beard took them to the front of a room and pushed open the door. The inside was quite spacious, with only 2 screens separated by it, but it was not a table and chair, but a seat. There were about 10 people sitting in it. Seems to be discussing things, and turned their heads together when they heard the sound of the door being pushed. Looking at the clothes on their bodies, Bai Shan guessed that they were from Goguryeo. Man Bao glanced at their faces, and then stopped on the faces of several people, and knew that those people were the people Mingda and Chang Yu wanted to meet. Her eyes looked back and forth among the 3, and finally she stared at one of them, sighing in her heart, although she was not as handsome or as cold as Brother Yang, but her skin was creamy, and she was still very good looking. Just when Man Bao was thinking, Bai Shan had already introduced each other with a smile to the people inside. Originally, the dozen or so people sitting in the room didn't take Bai Shan to heart. They just smiled and saluted out of politeness and awe of the great country. When they heard that Bai Shan was a student of the Imperial College, their eyes lit up and they were all excited. Stand up. Seeing that Man Bao was still in a daze, Bai Shan turned around to slightly block everyone's eyes, stretched out his hand and tugged at her sleeve, and hinted at her with his eyes, "Master Zhou, don't you think so?" Man Bao immediately returned to his senses. He didn't hear what Bai Shan said before. He nodded and replied, "Yes, yes." The visitor from Goguryeo looked at Man Bao suspiciously and asked, "Is this the editor?" Bai Shan nodded with a smile, "Yes, this is Lord Zhou. Come to make people look at each other." A little hesitant, "How is it a woman? Can a woman be an official too?" No matter what Bai Shan thought in their hearts, he took a quick look at the room and asked, "The adults are discussing things. Are we here to disturb you?" Chinese characters are Yuan in Goguryeo, and only nobles can afford to learn them, and only nobles can be officials, so the envoys can speak Chinese. Even if there are some differences in pronunciation, there is no problem in communication. Don't all the Mandarin people speak with some accents? Bai Shan didn't want to stay in the inn. There were few of them, and there were a lot of people on the other side, so it wasn't easy to chat. Let's take the best looking 3 out to play together. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1678. He thought it would take a while to chat before taking people out, but after hearing that Zhou Man was an editor and that he was a student of Qiazijian, they agreed. So the 2 took the 3 out of the inn, and Bai Shan couldn't help but ask them, "Aren't you afraid that we are liars?" Gao Yu, the leader of the 3, bowed and smiled humbly. "Young master has gorgeous clothes, noble and elegant, and looks like an aristocrat at first glance, so he won't lie to us." Bai Shan looked down at the clothes on his body, because today was a good day for Saturday Lang, so he did deliberately dress up, but the clothes on his body were just ordinary silk and satin. Gao Yu has already asked, "Where does Mr. Bai want to take us to talk?" Bai Shan pointed to the tea house opposite and said, "I still have a few friends up there, or shall we go and sit in the tea house?" The 3 beautiful men breathed a sigh of relief. Although it could be seen that Bai Shan and Zhou Man were young, their clothes and temperament were not bad, they didn't look like bad people, but they still didn't want to go too far. The place is naturally the best. So the 3 readily agreed and followed the 2 to the tea house opposite. The restaurant has only 2 floors. At this time, Mingda and Chang Yu were lying on the window on the 2nd floor and looked down. They recognized the 5 people as soon as they came out. The two got excited, and then compared back and forth. After a while, they were a little disappointed. It doesn't seem to be particularly good looking. It looks similar to Bai Shan. Mingda said, it's not as good looking as Manbao. Bai Erlang on the side couldn't help but said, Manbao is a girl. Mingda and Chang Yu ignored him for a while, and pointed to the man walking by the side, but that man is so white. Mingda also nodded, he is the best looking, and he looks quite gentle. Bai Erlang couldn't help but look at them, because the location was small, he squeezed them over there, and Mingda didn't mind and gave him a little space. Bai Erlang nodded after seeing it, it's quite white, but I think Swexian Yang was so white before. Chang Yu quickly asked, when? 6 years ago, 7 years ago. At that time, Brother Yang just arrived in our Lujiang County. I remember the first time I saw him, he was very white. I have never seen anyone whiter than him before. At this moment, Yang Heshu has been beaten by the officialdom and the sun, and he is not as white as before, but he is still handsome. Seeing that the 5 people came upstairs, the 3 of them immediately returned to the table and sat down, extremely dignified, and they couldn't see the appearance of the beauty who was lying at the window just now. Manbao pushed open the door, Mingda and Chang Yu raised their heads, and nodded slightly to the 3 of them reservedly. Bai Shan introduced them, these 3 are our classmates, this is Bai Chang, this is Miss Ming, and this is Miss Yu. Bai Shan and Mingda introduced, this is the messenger of Jiu from Goguryeo, the messenger of Lu Mian and the messenger of Xin Xian. Bai Erlang bowed his hands in return, and Mingda and Chang Yu nodded slightly without salute. After they glanced at Lu Mian, they raised their hands and said, everyone, please sit down. When the 3 of Gao Yu met, they knew that these 2 were only noble girls with high identities. 8 people sat down, of course they couldn't sit still. Bai Shan was responsible for bringing up the topic when he brought people out, so he reached out and took the menu sign with the shop assistant and asked the 3, what do you want to eat? The 3 of Gao Yu were a little restrained. Bai Shan smiled and said to the guy, then let's have some of your shop's signature desserts and some tea. The guy responded and smiled again, guest officer, we still have grapes from the western regions in our store. Would you like some of your distinguished guests? Manbao immediately asked, if there are grapes from the western regions, are they also grown in the suburbs of Beijing or Yangzhou? Buddy, yes. Manbao said, then give us one from the suburbs of Beijing, and another from Yangzhou. Buddy, my dear, the price of grapes in both estates is the same. I want to taste whether the taste is the same, anyway, just have one of each. Bai Shan nodded to the man, 2 of the other fruit plates. Then he returned the wooden plates to him, and when he was gone, he turned to look at Manbao, are you planning to grow grapes in Zhuangzi? Manbao nodded, it's too far from home, I can't eat the grapes the 3rd brother and the others planted, so let's plant them here. But the suburbs of Beijing and Yangzhou are not far from each other, do you need to be so meticulous? Manbao said indifferently, who knows, anyway, if you can eat it, will it make a difference if you taste it? The 2 of you exchanged a few words with me, and then asked Gao Yu, does your country grow grapes? Gao Yu said embarrassedly, no. Manbao immediately said, but your country has Korean ginseng. I have long admired the name. I don't know if you come with seeds this time. Gao Yu was even more embarrassed, shook his head and said, Korean ginseng is wild, you need to go into the forest to find it, and there are no seeds, but this time we came to present Korean ginseng to His Majesty. Manbao regretted, even if it is wild, you can consider collecting seeds. I still want to see if it can be artificially planted. The main thing is that the seeds are always alive and keek can be included. The Korean ginseng they sent, as well as the ginseng in the drugstore, were all dried or processed, which is quite a pity. After listening to Zhou Man's words, Gao Yu couldn't help sneering in his heart. It was a gift from the mountain god, how could it be cultivated by mortals? Dajin people are really arrogant and arrogant. Seeing that Man Bao didn't talk about what they wanted to know for a long time, Chang Yu couldn't help but ask, Ben, I heard that you are here to enroll in Qiaozijian. Gao Yu was refreshed, and immediately looked at Chang Yu with bright eyes and said, yes, our country lord heard that Xinluo sent students here to study, and also wanted us to learn the truth in Dajin and go back to teach Wanman, and sent us here to study. Chang Yu looked at Lu Mian and asked, you also want to go to school? Gao Yu couldn't help but turn his head to look at Lu Mian. Seeing his little white face, he couldn't help but look stagnant. Lu Mian was a little nervous, but he bowed slightly and replied yes. Gao Yu explained with a smile, Miss Yu, Lu Mian is my companion. Bai Shan explained, the messenger of Jiao is the fifth prince of Goguryeo. The son of the vassal king, Mingda, and Changjiao, who are more honorable than the vassal king, are not very interested. Mingda glanced at Lu Mian and said, I remember that the students sent by Xinluo have completed their studies and returned to the country. No more students have been sent over the past 2 years. Gao Yu picked up his lips and said with a smile, perhaps because King Silla has secured the throne, it doesn't matter if he comes or not, right? Man Bao suddenly interjected, I heard that Silla is the queen, right? Bai Erlang immediately became interested, nodded and said, yes, I heard people say it in Taixio. I heard that the previous king of Silla had no son, so he passed the throne to his daughter, and the queen of Silla also. Well done, I heard that it is very popular. Next update around 11 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1679. The three of Jiao are even quieter, because, the relationship between Goguryeo and Silla is really not very good. Bai Erlang and Man Bao discussed with gusto, obviously they didn't know the inside story, but Bai Shan knew. He hurriedly interrupted the two of them and brought the topic back again, have you decided which academy you're going to go to? Generally speaking, the students of the vassal states mostly go to the 4 schools and the Taixio. The three of Gao Yu paused and then smiled bitterly, Honglu Temple has not yet been decided. This is one of the reasons why they were very enthusiastic when they heard that Bai Shan was a student of Qiaozijian. Before, because of Silla, the relationship between Goguryeo and the Celestial Dynasty was not very harmonious. This time they sent tribute, although Honglu Temple accepted it, right, their request was not answered immediately. They could feel that Honglu Temple didn't really want to accept their admission to the Imperial College, but they didn't do much to prevent the 2 doctors they brought from applying for admission to the Imperial Physician's office, and it seemed that they had already agreed. However, what they learned in the Imperial Physician's office was only the study of craftsmen, and what they had to learn when they entered the Imperial College was the study of governing the country. They still wanted to enter the Imperial College. Man Bao, one of the important personnel of the Imperial Physician's office. Although the other party said it very vaguely, she could still hear their dislike of the Imperial Physician's office. Man Bao hummed in her heart, thinking that Xiao Yu and Zheng spoke well. These people didn't speak Chinese very well. She was struggling to listen now, and she had to relearn language and writing after entering the Imperial Physician's office, which was too troublesome. Still not recruited. The three of Gao Yu knew nothing about these things. When they told about their troubles, they wanted to ask Bai Shan and the others to help and plead with Honglu Temple, and it would be better to let them enter the Imperial College as soon as possible. Bai Shan looked at Mingda and Chang Yu. Mingda paid off, but Chang Yu felt a little distressed that Lu Mian was wronged, so he said, I'll go back and mention it to Liang Shaoqing. The surname of Shaoqing of Honglu Temple is Liang. Man Bao couldn't help but look at Lu Mian and then at Chang Yu, and said with kick in his heart, sure enough, beauty is wrong for the country. Coco. Bai Erlang thought so too. He sat diagonally across from Man Bao and Bai Shan, and couldn't help but wink at them. Bai Shan glared at him and told him to be more honest. Gao Yu, who was beside him, was already pleasantly surprised. He didn't know Chang Yu's identity, but she could say these words to show that her identity was not low and she could speak. So he hurriedly bowed and thanked him. Chang Yu stared at Lu Mian, but Lu Mian felt her gaze and blushed slightly. After being kicked by Gao Yu, he stood up and saluted. After being seated again, Gao Yu couldn't help but feel happy, and he and Bai Shan and others inquired about Guozijian. There is nothing that can't be said about this. Bai Shan and Bai Cheng have gone to school in it after all, and they are quite familiar with them. They talked to Gao Yu 3 about Guozijian, and Gao Yu 3 told Zhou Man about the various medicinal materials that they produced in Goguryeo. Mingda and Changjiao are curious about their country's people and their country's popular clothing. Everyone got what they wanted, and they naturally chatted happily. The 8 people didn't go anywhere in the afternoon, just sat in the box drinking tea and chatting, and when the attendants in the palace couldn't help reminding the 2 princesses the time, they reluctantly got up. It's getting late, we have to go back. Only then did Man Bao look outside and realize that it was really getting late, so he also got up and said, then we're going to prepare to say goodbye. Chang Yu took another look at Lu Mian reluctantly. She didn't know when the next time we would meet again. She sighed, turned her head and said to Man Bao, you will come to play with us next time. Man Bao, I'll go find you the day after tomorrow to play. Chang Yu pouted and said, I'm not the one I said. Man Bao said, small water can only flow, don't go too far, it will ruin the good impression I have in front of them, and I won't be able to bring you here in the future. Mingden nodded again, and persuaded her sister, Sister, let's go home first, the next winter solstice is a big festival, maybe we can go out and play before the winter solstice. Chang Yu felt that this idea was a good idea, so he looked at Lu Mian and the others, and left. Lu Mian secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and sent them downstairs with Gao Yuxingxuan. An attendant brought their horses up, the 2 mounted the horses, and the condescending one nodded slightly with them, and then the horses and the attendants left. Gao Yu glanced at the dozen or so entourages behind them, his eyes flickered slightly, he turned to look at Bai Shan and the others, and saw a carriage and a few horses parked beside them, and a few guards were standing by with their heads bowed. Gao Yu immediately asked with a smile, Mr. Bai, I don't know where your home is yet. I'll make an appointment next time. Bai Shan turned around and took a door sticker from Daji's hand and handed it to him. He smiled and said, my home is in Chongyuan Square, and the High Messenger is looking for Zhou's house. We all live there. Gao Yu knew that the people living in Kongai Yuanfang were all nobles, and they were more and more respectful towards the 3 of them. Of course, Gao Yu also gave them one of their doorposts, although they didn't really need it. Then Gao Yu watched the 3 get into the carriage and left. Daji drove the carriage for them, and the guards rode a horse and took Bai Shan and Bai Cheng's horses to go home together. When the carriage was far away, Bai Shan let down the curtains and said to Man Bao, Princess Changjiao loves beauty so much, you even brought her to see the beauty, what if something happens? Nothing will happen, Man Bao said firmly, there are so many beauties in the world, although Changjiao loves beauty, she is also a princess, she knows what she can do and what she can't do, not to mention, when it comes to beauty, Lu Mian is better than no one. As for senior brother Yang, you can't even compare to Yin He, she won't do anything wrong. Bai Erlang said from the side, and me. Man Bao and Bai Shan turned to look at him together. Bai Erlang slightly straightened his chest and said solemnly, Sir said that beauty lies not only in appearance, but also in talent and character, and this character is short-lived, let's ignore it, let's just say this talent, Lu Mian and the 3 still can't compare to me, and I'm not bad, right? After he finished speaking, he stroked a strand of hair and turned his head to look at Bai Shan and Man Bao. Man Bao made a vomit motion, Bai Shan directly threw his fist and pressed him down and beat him several times, shouting, "Do this again, and I'll send you to be with Ma Fuming next time." Bai Erlang exclaimed, "Isn't this delicate and understandable? Isn't that what Lu Mian is like?" "It's not," Man Bao said, "you call it zo, and he calls it gentle." At this time, Chang Yu, who was riding back to the palace, was also talking to Mingda about Lu Mian. "He looks really white, even whiter than our girls." Mingda nodded, "I don't think his body is very good when I look at him, but he is whiter than us, but I don't seem to have yin or bai when I look at him." Chang Yu sighed, "Not only does he not have yin or bai, but his talent is also a little worse. I didn't like yin or before. I thought he was a man weaker than our women, and he likes to cry. I remember that I went to my eldest sister's house for wedding wine a few years ago, and I saw him in the backyard, but the two cousins of the eldest brother-in-law's house said a few sarcastic words, and he cried on the spot." Chang Yu snorted. "If he scolded him or beat him back on the spot, I respected him as a good man, but he cried with red eyes, and I felt bad. At that time, the emperor also said that if it wasn't for his poor health, he would still want to have sex with him. The Yin family is a relative. I don't want to marry such a weak person. But the Yin or that I saw at Manbao's house today seems to be a little different from the ones I've seen before," Chang Yu said. "However, Lu Mian is really gentle. Yin or, I'm afraid it's just a pinch in the dough. The rose branches are very sticky." When Mingda heard the words, he laughed and asked, "Is my sister in a beauty contest or a concubine?" "Of course it's a beauty pageant, concubine, sigh, then it's up to the royal father to decide." Chang Yu sighed, "The royal father just wanted to marry me to the children of his noble family." Seeing that she was not very happy, Mingda asked, "Sister doesn't like them? Everyone grew up together. Who doesn't know what each one is like?" "I don't like it, not at all." Mingda was curious, "What does the elder sister like?" "I like the mighty and masculine, but look at the people mentioned by the father, which one is like that?" Mingda was shocked and couldn't help but ask, "Sister likes that? But, but Yang Heshu and Lu Mian are not like that." Mingda was puzzled, and his eyes were full of confusion. Chang Yu looked up at the sky in front of him 45 degrees, and sighed, "This is just an extravagant thought. If you can kiss me 2 years later, I'm already satisfied. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1680. The two princesses returned to the palace and honestly went to greet the empress, expressing that they were well behaved and came back on time. The emperor didn't know that they went to see the beauty, so he was very satisfied with this, and waved his hand, "Go back and rest, tomorrow is Chongyang, and you have to accompany your grandmother to dinner." The two responded obediently, and Chang Yu asked curiously before leaving, "Father, the vassal states have sent students who want to enter the imperial college, why didn't you allow them to go in and study?" The emperor glanced at her and asked with a smile, "Why did Chang Yu become curious about state affairs today?" However, he still explained one sentence, "The situation of each vassal state is different, so naturally they should be treated differently. Like Huiye and Dangxiang, they are sent when they are sent, but it is very difficult for the Tubo side. Humph, it is said to be surrendered to me. But there has been no tribute for 2 years, and there are still frictions at the border, so even if they earn their students, they can't earn it so easily. Going back, I have to mention to the doctors of Kuazijian, pay more attention to the students in Tubo, it is best to teach them carefully, and make sure that they learn the etiquette of Confucianism and Taoism. Jin's policy of governing the country is good." Chang Yu waited for a while and found that her father hadn't mentioned Goguryeo, so she couldn't help but ask, "What about Goguryeo?" "Goguryeo," the emperor said with a smile, "the Honglu temple intends to send people back, so it's enough to give some gifts in return." Mingda couldn't help but ask curiously, "Why?" The emperor said, Goguryeo hasn't come to pay tribute for a long time, and even sent troops to attack Liaodong County in the previous dynasty. I didn't like it very much, so I didn't plan to enroll them. Although the previous dynasty was not the current dynasty, even the emperor followed his father and led a group of brothers to destroy the previous dynasty, but this was also their internal matter. It is undeniable that the last dynasty was ruined, and the last emperor was the most responsible, but Goguryeo was also considered an introduction. If it hadn't attacked Liaodong County in the past, the last emperor of the previous dynasty would not have resorted to military force, so that the people would rather cut off their brothers and feet than join the army. And since he ascended the throne, in addition to the first 2 years of Koguryeo's surrender, the tribute that should be paid in the future is to pay 1 year or 2 years, and sometimes the poor do not cry, and directly cut off contact with them. If it weren't for the fact that after he ascended the throne, various things continued, he also wanted to send troops to fight Goguryeo, so this time he didn't ask Goguryeo to give them face. How could they still send people to the imperial prison? Moreover, in recent years, the relationship between Goguryeo and Silla Baekje has not been harmonious. The three countries are all vassals of Dajin, but in the northeast area, Silla and Baekje have to pay tribute to Goguryeo. A few years ago, Silla and Baekje jointly attacked Goguryeo, rejecting his unreasonable demands. Goguryeo national strength is not as strong as before. Unlike Tubo, it occupies important ground, has strong troops and strong horses, and can attack Dajin at any time, so it has to fight a stick and then give a sweet date. So for Goguryeo, who came to the door after being weak, you can give a little more stick. As for sweetness, Jujube, look at your mood. Chang Yu opened his mouth, finally looked at Mingda, and could only close his mouth silently. After leaving the palace, Chang Yu sighed, how can I do this? The royal father seems to be unwilling to give this favor to Goguryeo. If I knew earlier, I wouldn't talk big. Mingda was also a good boy, and when he heard the words, he became worried. Yes, the promise has already been said, so it's hard to believe it. The two sisters became worried, and Chang Yu said, Man Bao has always been quick-witted, otherwise I will ask her after she enters the palace. After thinking about it, Mingda said, Don't think about it, Man Bao wish they were unlucky. Chang Yu was surprised, why? Don't you know that Gao Yu offended Man Bao when you were in the tea house just now? Chang Yu, who was only interested in admiring the beauty, didn't pay any attention. She shook her head and asked, why did Gao Yu offend her? Mingda said, Gao Yu looked down on the imperial physician's office when he talked, and I saw that Man Bao was a little unhappy at the time. She is not someone who can take anger. If the third brother offended her, she would take revenge on the spot, not to mention the little Goguryeo. The messenger, you better not ask. I asked, and it was a bad idea. Chang Yu also thought about it, and then he also had an opinion on Gao Yu, knowing that Man Bao is an imperial physician, and the imperial physician's office is still Man Bao's book. He even offends people. It is no wonder that the royal father does not look down on him, but it is a pity that Lu Mian followed him. Aggrieved. Mingda, when you were looking at people at the window of the restaurant at noon, who praised the other party for being like a bright moon. But the double ninth day is coming, which is a major festival, and they don't have much time and energy to think about it. On the second day, they not only had to accompany the Queen Mother to dinner, but also accompanied the Queen to condolences to the elders of the clan and the clan women. Although the Empress planned to let Chang Yu marry 2 years later, Mingda was not in a hurry to say kiss, but the person who should meet still has to meet. You always have to fight your reputation first, and let everyone know that the emperor has 2 precious daughters who have not chosen a concubine. If you are interested, keep the children of school age at home, and then we will talk about kissing. The emperor's daughter is sometimes unhappy to marry. As soon as the sisters got busy, they forgot what happened yesterday, but the emperor did not forget, so although he was smiling when he went to accompany the elderly and ministers to dinner, he was not very happy. Especially when he saw the envoys of various countries in the distance, he was even more unhappy. In order to express the grand-mindedness and bearing of the great Jin, this time the Chongyang banquet was given, and the envoys from various countries who came to the DPRK also got a place to attend. The emperor glanced indifferently in the direction of the Goguryeo mission. As soon as the two daughters left yesterday, the emperor learned what they were doing from the guards who accompanied them out of the palace. He didn't mind at all when he went to Zhou Man's house for a wedding banquet and sprinkled a handful of red envelopes along with them, but what he did mind was that Zhou Man led them to see men. What are some good-looking men? For this reason, the emperor was very angry and said to Guzhong, I remember this year's Chongyang, Beijing officials are above the 6th rank, and there are old people in the family are rewarded. After thinking about it, Guzhong bowed and said, yes, they are all ordinary things, such as sachets, fans, and wine. The emperor said, I will take Zhou Man's share, thinking that Zhou Jin and his wife are righteous people. There is still too much movement to remove the reward. If Wei Ji finds out, I am afraid that not only will he be impeached, but he will also be impeached. Baby girl, so the emperor was silent for a while and then changed his mind. Forget it, when you ask someone to send it, let her give her a letter of guilt, and let her hand it over quietly, and you are not allowed to go to the censor's desk. Guzhong, the gifts are not for their internal servants. That's a matter of the Ministry of Households, and the officials themselves went to the Ministry of Households to get them. Guzhong felt helpless, but responded with a smile on his face, turned around and asked his apprentice to wait in the imperial city the next day. When I see Lord Zhou Xiao tomorrow, tell her this clearly, lest she don't know what went wrong. So the next day, after drinking the tea of the new daughter-in-law, the newly dressed old Zhou Tiou and Man Bao went to the Ministry of Household to receive the gifts for the festival, and he saw the father-in-law in the palace again. The other party pulled Man Bao aside and whispered about the emperor's anger last night. Master Zhou Xiao, when my master asks you to write a letter of sin, be more sincere. Your Majesty is not very temperamental, it depends on how well you write it. Well, this is over. Man Bao complained to Keek in his heart, it's still not very angry. It seems that the handsome man was obviously Changjiao and Mingda's idea, but he is angry with me in the future. See you at 4 p.m.